So to get started, we need to define a policy brief. Now, we also have a module on evidence briefs, and we are going to talk about both policy briefs and evidence briefs across these two modules. There are a lot of similarities between a policy brief and an evidence brief, so you will see a lot of the same content in both modules. Likely you're going to watch both modules, and so you'll see some of the same formatting, the same guidelines, the same recommendations. There are some distinct differences between a policy brief and an evidence brief. We will discuss those differences and we will highlight those differences where we can, where it's appropriate throughout the module. So today we're going to focus on policy briefs, which is it is one of the clearest documents you can possibly write. And it sits in a very interesting window in the world of science and technical communication. On one end, you have like journal articles and edited books and like massive research texts that are meant for other practitioners and experts in the field, and they're full of jargon and math and all sorts of cool stuff. And then on the opposite end, you have stuff meant for the general public. You have newsletter articles, you have magazine articles, you have incredibly informal blog posts, all meant jargon-free, explanatory, wonderful stuff. And then somewhere in the middle sits this world of policy briefs, where it's not going to be nearly as technical, nearly as detailed and full of jargon as journal articles or books, but it is not meant for the general public. And we'll get into the audiences of a policy brief, but I just want to make that distinction right off the bat, that a policy brief is meant to be concise, and it's meant to be free of jargon, and it is meant to summarize an issue. Notice here, this is not a summary of research. This is not a summary of findings. This is not a summary of analysis. It is a summary of an issue, a policy issue facing a community. That community could be a town. That community could be a nation. That community could be the entire world. This is a document that is meant to summarize the issue and also to summarize the options that are available to deal with that issue. So there's some problem, and as we'll see in our exemplars, that problem could be rising food prices. That is an issue. So we are going, in our policy brief, we're going to summarize that issue, and we are also going to summarize some options of how to solve that issue. What approaches can we take? What options do we have? What's viable? And it's going to contain both elements. And with the case of most policy briefs, some policy briefs, I should say, can stop there. Most policy briefs take one step further and take a recommended course of action. They actually recommend something, they actually say something, they actually put something out there in the world saying, this is what we think we ought to do based on evidence. And that is one of the cool things about policy briefs, is that underlying the entire discussion is a lot of intense science and research and analysis and data and just all the amazing things that you would put in a journal article. But now you're taking that journal article, now you're taking that research and putting it into action. You're creating policy, you're crafting policy, you're telling people your recommendation for what you think they should do based on your research or the research of other people. So this is a translational text. This is a text, a policy brief takes something that you have personally investigated, or you have come across, or you've learned, or you've studied in actual research, and now we're bringing it into the real world. It's a tool, it's an effective tool, because as we'll see, the people who are reading policy briefs are the people who can enact change. They're policymakers. They are non-governmental organizations. These are people who are doing the things, passing legislation, being activists. They're working in the real world. They want guidance. They want recommendations, and they want those recommendations based on research and analysis and reasoning and logic and mathematics and science. Like, they want evidence-based reasoning, and the policy brief is a tool for accomplishing that. So you can see how a policy brief sits in this very interesting world where you're going to translate research. You're definitely translating research, but not just to describe that research for the general public. You're taking it one step before that, where you're translating that research for a certain audience so that you can affect change based on what you learn. And that is a policy brief.